Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and I'm coming with a big time update on who's been cut so far, who is reportedly safe, pretty much guaranteed to make the team, and who is potentially safe based on the guys that we've cut. We're going to dive into all of the cuts, all of the position groups. We're going to dive into each player and everything and why they're cut, what we're planning to do with that position after we made the cut. Are we looking for outside help? Are we looking to bring back some certain players? Maybe Landon, maybe Ereck Flowers? What's the plan here? So we're going to dive into all of that, man. There's a lot of surprise cuts right now. I mean, based on what we saw from the preseason from a few of these guys, I'm not surprised. But the rapport that they had with this team and them being veterans and how much this team believed in some of these guys, I'm very surprised by some of these cuts. But at the end of the day, man, people got to stop getting so attached to these players, man. Of course, if we were able to keep 80 players in the regular season, of course it would make sense to keep a lot of these guys. But we got to cut it down to 53. And if you're not performing, what have you done for me lately? Hopefully a lot of these guys make the practice squad, and I'm going to break down exactly when teams can start working on their practice squads. But hey, man, if they end up somewhere else, I don't think it's necessarily going to kill the team like some people act like it will. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, when I come back, make sure y'all pull up every Friday for the broadcast podcast where we talk about everything funny, everything sports, music, anime, gaming, whatever. And then make sure you pull up every Sunday for the during the game live streams and the post game live streams where y'all call in, you voice your opinions, positive and or negative, about the Commanders, and ask whatever questions you may have. Like I always say, if you had a comment on one of my videos and I wasn't able to read it or get to it, make sure you call into the show and ask that question through the phone or however you want to spend your time. And without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so of course we got to start with the cuts, and just to let you know, we have to trim our roster down to 53 people by 4 p.m. today, but then you can start working on your 16 player practice squad as of tomorrow, August 31st. But you got to allow all cut players to clear waivers, and it's actually pretty crazy too, because David Bada, with him being a part of the International Pathway program, he's able to stay on the roster and not count towards that 53-man roster. I originally thought that he would, but technically we're going to have 54 players on our roster, including David Bada. There's no reason to release him. He doesn't count as a spot on the roster. That's really interesting. But one of the most notable cuts, linebacker Khaleke Hudson. And I've been saying it for the past couple of weeks. I've been saying, man, he doesn't even look as good as he did in his rookie season. He doesn't look as fast. I don't know what happened to him, like how he regressed, if anything. I don't know if he got better mentally. I would assume he did. But it's just like physically, he just took a step back, or I don't know what it is. I'm going to have to go back and look at the All-22 to really see what happened with Khaleke Hudson, especially this preseason. But I never heard him popping in practices, and then in the preseason games where we got to see him live, it just wasn't good. He was always a step behind. I mean, it was that one play against the Ravens where the fullback was able to make a juggling one-handed catch, and if your coverage was good, he would have had no chance of catching it. I mean, this man is sitting here one hand trying to corral it in for like 3 seconds. If you're there, you hit him, of course he doesn't catch it. It just falls down or whatever. Maybe it even pops up and it's an interception. But Khaleke Hudson was so far away from a fullback too. We're not even talking about like Devonta Smith or CeeDee Lamb or any of these receivers that he may end up having to cover at some point, or even like a Dallas Goedert. We're talking about a super backup fullback for the Ravens. So I kind of saw that cut coming. I didn't believe they would end up doing it because they had such high hopes for him, because he was basically first in line. He had the first opportunity to become that Buffalo nickel that Jack Del Rio really wants to utilize. Technically, Derek Forrest is second in line, and then Percy Butler's third if we're going by draft order. Khaleke Hudson was here before both of those guys, so he technically had the advantage, but he was just never able to make the most out of it. And he looked really good at Michigan. I saw a lot of potential in him, but it just never developed into anything meaningful, at least yet. Now, I don't want to just completely indict him and just act like he's never going to be anything, but as of right now, we need every one of these 54 spots to at least be able to put out a good team against the Jaguars, because we have so many injuries, and maybe we have to keep a couple of extra guys due to those injuries going into the Jaguars game, because they may not force people to come back sooner than they need to. Again, like I'm gonna keep saying, if we had to play a Super Bowl tomorrow, I felt like the vast majority of the guys on the roster will be playing, probably everybody but Chase Young, and maybe Tyler Larsen as well. But they feel like they may be able to get away with just keeping a couple of depth guys on the roster, and then maybe potentially just having the other guys sit out, and then we go into the Jaguars game with a slightly incomplete roster, and hopefully we come out unscathed and with a W. It just depends on how they want to go on with it. Or maybe you put some of these injured guys on the PUP list, and then you keep a lot of these depth guys on the official 53-man roster. We'll see. Either way, Khaleke, Hudson, you weren't performing, and we really need that roster spot for one of these other positions, potentially going into this Jaguars game, especially week 1, in less than 2 weeks. And we're going to get to it, but it's just crazy, all of these releases that have happened at linebacker and corner. We are definitely about to dive into the waiver wire. We have to have something cooking up, because we're cutting everybody at linebacker and corner right now. Nobody's safe. And then other cuts, most notably cornerback Danny Johnson and cornerback Corn Elder. Those were supposedly our cornerbacks 4 and 5. Like Benjamin St-Juste, William Jackson III, and Kendall Fuller, your automatic top 3 corners, your starters, with Benjamin St-Juste technically be your starting slot. And then the direct backup to one of the outside corners was supposed to be Corn Elder, and the direct backup to Benjamin St-Juste, who had concussion issues last year, was Danny Johnson. So the fact that they're gone, it's not like we're cutting the 7th or 8th string guys. We're cutting the guys that we're one injury away from having to go out there and play. And apparently they was just so bad in the preseason, the Burgundy and Gold Rivera and company were like, man, we'll just have to find somebody. It's got to be anybody but these guys, man. It just can't be them. So I'm very surprised. I mean, like I said in my 53-man roster prediction, I had Danny Johnson making the team, but I did say that he'll probably only make the team because he's riding off of that 4-game win streak wave where he actually played really well last season during the regular season. But so far this offseason, I was hearing about Josh Drayton outplaying him in practices, and then in the preseason games, he made a couple of really good plays, but like 80% of the time, he was just completely terrible and getting beat one way or another. Starters, backups, it didn't matter. I don't know what happened to him. It seemed like it was a completely different corner from what I saw last year in the regular season, again in that 4-game win streak. But I'm not surprised, because the only reason he would have made this team is, first of all, his rapport with Ron Rivera. He's played in the majority of the games that the Burgundy and Gold have played since Ron Rivera has been here, and he looked really good in that 4-game win streak. But that's literally it. That's all he had to his name at this point. And of course, like a reserve special teams returner, but that was it. And then Corn Elder, he didn't look so great either. Now, granted, he didn't look as terrible as Danny Johnson, at least that I noticed. It wasn't as obvious in the preseason, but apparently he didn't do enough. Then my dog, Steven Parker, also got cut. I expected this. I was hoping he would make the roster, and I felt like he did a lot in that Panthers game. I mean, he literally looked like my Georgia Bulldog, Lewis Seen, but then the rest of the preseason games, he didn't shine as much. Especially in that Ravens game, I was expecting him to go out there and look like he was playing above his depth chart spot. It was all backups. It was second stringers, third stringers, fourth stringers, and the fact that he didn't shine in that game, it doesn't surprise me that he didn't make the roster. But hopefully he clears waivers and makes the practice squad, and this is a guy that we can develop into something. Then William Bradley King at defensive end, I'm really shocked about that, just off of the fact that, you know, he's a safer option. Shaka Toney's more so the potential. But like I said, even in my 53-man roster prediction where I had us keeping William Bradley King, I said if it were up to me, it'd be F.A. Obata and Shaka Toney getting those last 2 spots. If it were up to me, it would not be William Bradley King. But I still thought that they would keep him because he's consistent, and I thought that they may go more consistency as far as the depth goes for the defensive line over the potential of like a Shaka Toney or F.A. Obata, who are both of these guys that have high ceilings, but you still need to develop them a little bit further for them to be truly special. And of course, Shaka Toney, I just feel like he has so much potential. There's just no way you dangle him out there to clear waivers and hope that he makes it to your practice squad. There's no way. His pass rush potential, he's shown it in the preseason. He does things that nobody else on this roster can do. He's not Von Miller, but he's that Von Miller play style, quick off the edge, crazy bend, bursty. Love Chase Young, love Montez Sweat, but they don't have the bend around the edge that Shaka Toney has. And like I keep saying, I'm a huge fan of Shaka Toney. I feel like he should move to some sort of like a Sam outside linebacker role so he can get more playing time. I'm confident that he can improve in coverage. He showed a little something at the Senior Bowl. I don't know why we're not trying it since we've had him here. I feel like I need to see him do it more, and I just want him to be on the field more, even if he's not covering as much as he probably should. If he's just on the field more, you have an additional great pass rusher slash blitzer that's going after the quarterback, and I would love that. I mean, 5 defensive lineman sets, we're going to be in those quite a bit this year. We didn't do it much in the preseason, but that was more so just because Jack Del Rio doesn't want to show his hand. And so I just think there's an excellent opportunity for Shaka Toney to be even effective right now, but his ceiling is limitless as far as pass rush potential. Like I'm going to keep saying, man, Micah Parsons talked about Shaka Toney more than any of his other teammates that I can remember. He hyped him up more than he talked about us getting Jahan Dotson this past season. He hyped him up more than other Penn State players that have gone in the draft the past couple of years. He felt like he was criminally underdrafted in the 7th round. And at times, Shaka Toney looks like he should have gone way before the 7th round. He just got to become more consistent, and he has to become a better edge run defender. He's shined at times in that aspect, but there's some plays even in this past preseason where he's just getting bulldozed out the way, just completely escorted out of the play by an offensive tackle. And then also defensive tackle Justin Hamilton was cut. Wide receiver Matt Cole was cut. I mean, I already knew when we signed him he wasn't making the team, but there was hope there because he's a fast, speedy, hopefully returner type of guy. And then he made a couple of plays in that preseason game against the Ravens, but then he also had a couple of ugly drops. Not surprised. Defensive end Tyler Clark was also cut. Defensive end Jacob Panajuk was cut. And tight end Jake Hausman was also cut. But Jake Hausman, even when we signed him, he was clearly just like a camp body. I mean, we had Nathan Gary, a linebacker, playing tight end for us at times in practice because we literally had no tight ends left. It was Armani Rogers, Eli Wolf, and then Nathan Gary. So they went out and got Kendall Blanton and Jake Hausman. I'm not surprised that Jake Hausman didn't make the team. And I honestly think that Kendall Blanton probably won't make the team either, unless they want to go with the strategy where they keep a lot of these depth guys on the roster and they put some of these other guys like John Bates or Cole Turner maybe on the PUP list. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think those guys are healthy enough to where they will play against the Jaguars, even if it has to be on some sort of a pitch count. And you see a lot more Armani Rogers than you probably expect. Also, the Commanders are waiving Wes Martin. He's normally been a guard, but we brought him in to try to make the team as center. And then, like, literally the first practice since he came back, he had a fumbled snap to Taylor Heineke, so I already knew it was wraps there. I mean, I already didn't think he would make the team anyway, but Chase Roulier looks like he's getting back to full health. He's our starting center. Wes Schweitz is getting back healthy. He's your backup center and guard the entire interior offensive line. Tyler Larson is still on the PUP list, but he may not be far away from coming back after having to miss 4 games just like Chase Young for being on the PUP list. And then you also have other guys that have kind of done their thing, subbing in at center at times. You even had Sadiq Charles playing a little center in practices and things like that. So I guess they feel like they're good enough to where they have enough offensive line depth and enough offensive line versatility in the depth to where they can just kind of substitute a guy if need be, if break glass in case of emergency. But as of right now, Chase Roulier looks like he's healthy enough to start week 1, and Wes Schweitzer should be healthy enough to back him up if need be. And then also, the Washington Commanders cut offensive lineman Nolan Laufenberg, also cut wide receiver Kyrick McGowan, who was trying to make the team mostly as a return guy, wide receiver Markin Michelle, my Georgia dog, Sony Michelle's brother. I hope we can bring him back to the practice squad because he's just one of those off-season all-stars, man. I mean, he even made a couple of plays in that Ravens game that showed, like, man, there's something there. And in practices and in that Saturday night practice, that man is Mr. Get Touchdowns, man. He may honestly be leading our receivers in touchdowns this offseason. He's at the very least top 3. So it's amazing that a guy like that didn't make the team. That more so just says how competitive our receiving group is. But also, I just really hope he makes the practice squad and we can keep him and still develop that guy. Of course, I'm a little biased because he is Sony Michelle's brother, but he's also a guy that just consistently makes plays, whether it's been Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, or Sam Howell throwing him the ball. It's mostly been Sam Howell, but still. Then offensive lineman Aaron Montero didn't make the team. Little surprised because he's mostly a tackle. We even had him starting at right guard against the Chiefs when it was starters versus starters because of all of the injuries that we had. And the fact that he had that type of positional flex, I am a little surprised that he didn't make the team. And then center John Toth had to go. I mean, I don't want to talk on people getting cut technically getting fired and things like that, but he was terrible against the Ravens. He was our worst offensive lineman out there. And again, it was second stringers, third stringers, and fourth stringers out there. And for you to get beat that bad by the backups of the backups for another team, I already knew it was just set in stone right there. I already knew John Toff wasn't making the team when he got pushed into Sam Howell, like literally getting tackled with Sam Howell. That's ridiculous. Also, linebacker Trey Walker got cut. Not very surprised, but he made a few plays in the preseason. Also, my dog, hybrid linebacker safety Farrod Gardner, is getting cut. A little sad about that, of course, for bias reason from him being from Atlanta, but also his talent. I really hope that he makes the practice squad. It's reported that the Commanders hope that he makes it to our practice squad and clears waivers because they see a lot of potential in him as like a Buffalo nickel type of guy. We will see, especially as far as depth goes. So that's a name to watch as far as potentially being brought back on the practice squad for sure. And then just to double back before we go to who's reportedly safe, who's pretty much almost guaranteed to be safe from what I'm hearing. And then after that, we're going to get to who's potentially safe just based on the guys that have been cut. This cornerback depth is atrocious, man. I'm scared. I mean, literally, we have our 3 starters, which I love. I actually really like our 3 starting corners, including Benjamin St-Juste in the slot. And then after that, Christian Holmes is next up, Josh Drayden, and I'm very surprised Dewan Neal hasn't been cut yet, or at least announced cut yet, but there's no way he's making the team after the way he got killed against the Ravens. That's an automatic. I just think they just haven't taken the time to officially announce it. He's definitely not making the team. But still, as of right now, after our 3 starting corners, if there is one injury, Christian Holmes is a starter. That's unacceptable. We're definitely about to dive heavy into the waiver wire to address that. And same thing with line. And then lastly, before we move on, also William Bradley King, it's been reported that other teams are interested, so don't be surprised if he doesn't make it to the practice squad like he's done before with us. So just go ahead and let William Bradley King go. Another team is going to go ahead and more than likely pick him up. Oh, and also just got a notification about the fact that the Washington Commanders are releasing Alex Akumbulu. I believe he did get hurt in like the Chiefs preseason game, so I'm not surprised there as well. All right, now let's get to the guys that are reportedly safe. It's been reported by John Com the wide receiver Dax Milne will make the roster. And first of all, they like his route running from multiple spots on the field, outside, inside, wherever. And then also, he's more than likely going to be our primary punt returner. The fact that he's making the team pretty much says that Alex Erickson more than likely won't make the team, but we'll see. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Also, John Com reported that safety Jeremy Reeves has earned a spot as well, and he shined a lot in the preseason. Now, granted, he had his fair share of mistakes, but he looked really good out there at times. He looks like a way smarter player than he did just a couple of years ago when it was him and Cameron Curl as like our starting safeties at a certain period of time. He looks way smarter. I mean, there was this one play against the Ravens where he literally noticed like something they were doing with their formation, and I'm not even exactly sure if he was actually supposed to blitz on that play, like if he was told to blitz, like literally by Jack Del Rio, but it looks like he just diagnosed the play and then made his decision that I'm gonna just go to the backfield and make a play real quick. And then the fact that he worked around all of the tight ends and receivers that tried to block him and then made the play in the backfield on the running back for like a 2-3 yard loss, it was just amazing. So that was probably his best highlight of the entire preseason. Granted, it was against the Ravens, it was against backups, but it's showing that he's learning. And I've always felt like he's been solid depth at the safety position because, again, when he was starting for us, our defense wasn't even that bad. Now, granted, he's had his fair share of mistakes when he's been promoted to actually play in some games since then, but he looks like a new him this offseason. This is the best version of Jeremy Reeves that I've seen. And then now for the potentially safe guys. I'm assuming Jonathan Williams. First of all, just from reporters, they like Jonathan Williams more than Jaret Patterson. Who knows? Maybe they keep both with this Brian Robinson situation. We'll see. Brian Robinson is meeting with team doctors today. He's probably already met with them, so we're just waiting for the information to come out. Maybe since they had practice, I believe at like 1:30, maybe we'll hear something about it either during or after practice from like Ron Rivera in the press conferences and things like that. But as of right now, it looks like Jonathan Williams will be at the very least that third running back after Antonio Gibson and JD McKissic, and then maybe Jaret Patterson if they want to keep 4. He's that guy. And then like I spoke about earlier, it looks like Christian Holmes is pretty much safe to make the roster because as of right now, he's the direct backup to any injury that we have in the cornerback position right now. And granted, he was getting killed a little bit in that preseason game against the Ravens, but at least he was always there. Like DeJuan Neal was getting killed 5 yards or more by the receivers. I mean, complete separation. Christian Holmes was there. It would just be a good throw and a good catch. Now, granted, there still needs to be some improvement, and that's still unacceptable, but you can at least see like some flashes. And then I've been hearing so much about him having such a great camp, so I'm not surprised that they're going to keep him. And then, like I said, we're going to have to attack corner and linebacker in free agency, even if that includes bringing back Landon Collins. Also, with William Bradley King gone, like I've already spoken about, Shaka Toney seems like he's an obvious choice to end up staying, along with F.A. Abada. Also, with Khaleke Hudson gone and Trey Walker released as well, Milo Eifler is right now your 4th linebacker. And honestly, between him and David Mayo, he looked like the better linebacker. Outside of Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb, he was the best linebacker out there in preseason, easily. I mean, Nathan Gary flashed at times, but he ended up on IR, and then we released him with an injury settlement. After that, Milo Eifler was easily our best linebacker, again, outside of Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb. So, I mean, unless they want to go get a bunch of free agents, I'm going to dive into that in a whole nother video because you got guys like Gerard Davis out there potentially. But I think it's safe to assume that Milo Eifler will make this team. He did just that. I mean, he really played that well in the preseason. He stepped up big time for us. I mean, there's also Dejon Harris, but I don't think he'll make the team. I think he'll be released. Also, with a lot of the defensive line releases that have happened, I think it's safe to assume that Daniel Wise will make the team. And again, like I already said, F.A. Abada. And then this takes me to my last few thoughts before we get up out of here. With Danny Johnson gone and Antonio Gibson now technically has to be your running back 1 again, because who knows what's going on with the Brian Robinson situation again. With him, football is not important. Like his life and can he walk? Is he perfectly fine? How's his family? How is he? All of that type of stuff is far more important. But when we look at it from a football standpoint, I'm not expecting him to be ready to run the ball week 1. So Antonio Gibson's your running back 1. So he may have to take a step back from being our primary kick returner. He may go back to being the normal Antonio Gibson like we've seen. No Brian Robinson, no return game. And so again, with Danny Johnson gone, who's your kick returners? I mean, Dax Milne is probably your primary punt returner, but I'm thinking maybe Jaret Patterson makes the roster, first of all, because to replace Brian Robinson, maybe you keep 2 running backs instead of just an additional 1 in Jonathan Williams. And also, Jaret Patterson has shown that he can do pretty well with returning kickoffs. It's not Antonio Gibson potential, it's not Jahan Dotson or Curtis Samuel, but it may be better than what Dax Milne can offer you in kick returns. Again, Dax Milne is your starting punt returner with him making the team, obviously. But I feel like they may go an extra running back rather than keeping an extra receiver like an Alex Erickson. I think that's what the holdup is right now, deciding between Jaret Patterson and Alex Erickson right now for one of those last spots, mostly for special teams, but also for them to contribute in their respective position groups. But like I've been saying for years, when you're trying to make the team, you're trying to get one of those last few spots. You're not only competing against guys in your position group, you're competing against guys in other position groups. Alex Erickson, what he had to go out there and do in this preseason would show the Commanders that not only should he be an extra receiver on this team, but you need to keep an extra receiver spot for me rather than keeping an extra linebacker spot or another running back or another tight end or another offensive lineman. That's who you're competing against. You're competing against everybody on the team on the back end of the roster. That Ravens preseason game was like literally a big tryout for everybody. You're not just competing against receivers from Alex Erickson's point of view. Same thing with Jaret Patterson. You're not just competing against the running backs. You're competing against the entire back end of the roster. And like I said earlier, man, I think there may be a chance we're bringing back Landon Collins. Who knows? We'll see what happens after the waiver wire. If we do bring him back, I'd be very surprised if it happens before tomorrow. But I'm really interested in seeing what happens if we end up bringing Landon Collins back to start at the Buffalo nickel. And then we'll just continue to develop Derek Forrest and Percy Butler. Take them along a little bit slower. They'll probably still play quite a bit, but you won't demand one of those guys to be your starting Buffalo nickel and be out there more than you probably should at this point, because Percy Butler loved his potential, but the way he got beat alongside Danny Johnson in that Ravens game was completely unacceptable, and he may not be as ready as I'd hoped he'd be yet. And then Derek Forrest, maybe he's ready to step up at Buffalo nickel and be your true starting Buffalo nickel, but we've already seen that this defense can be really good with Landon Collins just starting Buffalo nickel, and if he's willing to come back for cheap, I don't see why not. And then also with a lot of the offensive lineman issues that we're having, again, I feel like a lot of these guys will be healthy enough to go, even just week 1, but I also don't feel like it's a long-term problem. I feel like we'll be mostly healthy, almost fully healthy after like the first couple of weeks, as long as no more injuries happen. Again, I feel like really we'll just be waiting on Chase Young and Tyler Larson to come back at a certain point. I feel like everybody else should be healthy, but in case of emergency, Ereck Flowers is still out there, and we saw him look really good at left guard for us last year. So, hey man, those are 2 options right there. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Also, let me know how you feel about everybody that got cut, everybody that's potentially safe, everybody that's reportedly safe, and who do you feel like will try to target in free agency and the waiver wire to make up for a lot of these cuts. Especially, I think the cornerback position right now is the biggest worry. Christian Holmes is 1 injury away from starting, not only playing, starting. That's a little scary. But yeah, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.